Hey guys, welcome back to Rocket Gyan, my fellow space tubers, and today we are gonna see a rare flight, I would say, because it's coming in from Korea. And yes, South Korea to be specific, has a space program. And today you will be seeing this beauty flying to space. I mean, this is the engine which you just saw, and it looked very much similar to what you have seen before. You must have recalled it already. And yes, it is somewhat similar. So we'll talk about everything. So don't worry about it. But right now, you can see on the bottom right, we can see the rocket. It is venting the cryogenic fuel, which means the liquid oxygen. So by it venting, which means we know that it contains liquid oxygen, right? So we'll talk about it. So don't worry, and welcome to the stream. I hope my voice is hearable and everything is good. Yep. So welcome to the stream, Nishant, 24/7, Anton Smith, Flying the Bug, and Sam. How are you all? And we are right now T minus 53 minutes from the launch. Everything is looking good, although this is the live view of the rocket, which you can see in front of you. So yes, this is how it looks like. And it's venting quite a lot, and I just love this pad. I mean, the pad itself is very, very beautiful and unique. So yes, you can see the transporter erector, the rocket. We are T minus 52 minutes, and we will be talking about it. So let's just first of all, talk about this rocket, this mission, and understand it, how this mission could change the Korean space program. So talking about it, so this is the KSLV-II rocket. Hi Andrew, hi Finals Frontier Space. Uh, yep, space is hard to get to. No matter how SpaceX has made it look so simple, it is a frontier which is very hard to get to. So, yeah, let's hope this KSLV rocket in front of you can make it to the orbit. So this is the KSLV-II rocket. They had a KSLV-I rocket. Now this is a KSLV-II rocket, aka Nuri rocket. Also, so what is special about this rocket? I mean, this rocket itself, has is basically the indigenously designed, right? So which means that this rocket has been fully developed in Korea. They had this new KSLV-I rocket, which had the Russian first stage and then the Korean second stage, but this one is fully developed in house at Korea, and that's why, if successful today, they will be able they will only be the seventh country in this whole world to have uh, a satellite or rocket put into the orbit by its own technology, indigenously developed technology. And the best part is, yeah, they are not starting with hypergolic fuels like China and India did, or SRBs. They are literally diving straight into the cryogenic fuels, like semi-cryogenic fuels. So yeah, that's it. So let's talk about this rocket now. So this rocket is 47.2 meter in height, diameter is like 3.5 meter, 200 tons is the weight, 300 tons is the first stage thrust, and it has a capability of putting 1.5 tons to low earth orbit. So it has the capability of um, um, PSLV rocket, the medium launchers basically. So this is such a cool satellite. Basically, this low earth orbit, which they say is a sun synchronous orbit, 1.5 tons to sun synchronous orbit, which is actually great. So the payload capacity to low earth orbit will actually increase, like, um 3 tons, something like that. So yeah, so it is a 3-stage rocket, which you can see. This is the first stage, this is the second stage, and this is the third stage. So let's talk about the first stage. This is how the first stage look like. And the best part about this Korean Space Agency, that they are really very open. I mean, you can find everything which they have designed. You can literally see the isogrid structure of the tank in here, the actual sketch. I mean, I'll show you one video which will literally show you each nut bolt of the engine, and it's a very good looking CGI which you will see. But right now let's talk about the first stage. First stage consists of four 75-ton or engines which runs on liquid oxygen and kerosene as its fuel. And talking about those engines, they are KARI-0075. So that is one thing. So fourth in the first stage. Then this is the second stage. Second stage has one engine which but it's a vacuum optimized engine, again the same one used in the first stage. And then the third stage, which you can see here, again runs on liquid oxygen and kerosene, and it's a 7-ton engine, so that is one difference in here. And obviously it has the fairing and the payload in here. So talking about the summary, this is how the summary would look like. KARI-075 engine running on RP1 and LOX as its fuel. The cycle is the gas generator cycle, and you can see everything in here, how it looks like, the first stage has 4 of them, the second stage has 1 of them. And yeah, right now it is standing on the pad, and we are waiting for it to come to life. So this KARI-075 engine, which means the first stage, has an ISP of 261 seconds, which is good rate, and then 325 seconds in vacuum, and then 315 with the other one. So this is how it looks like. Cool. This is I was talking about 2.6 tons to low Earth orbit, 5.5 tons to sun-synchronous orbit. Now moving on, let's talk about the engine. So this engine, don't you think looks very similar to some engine which we have already seen? Don't you think it's very similar to that? I mean, we can say that this actually looks very similar to Merlin engine. And yes, indeed it is, because this engine, I can tell you that this engine runs on RP1 and LOX, as you know, and has a gas generator cycle, and looks very similar to SpaceX Merlin engine. And let me tell you, this Korean space program, this national program, is actually inspired from the SpaceX. They themselves say our role model is SpaceX. So they say we need to make a rocket so low cost so that it can be commercially viable, and that's how we are working in. So this is the Merlin rocket engine, not the Merlin one, but a KARI-0775, but looks very similar to Merlin one. Hey Andrew, thank you so much for that too. Is any of it is reuse in future plans? Right now, as I said, it is this space program is inspired from SpaceX, so it won't be long until they have a reusable rocket. So but right now this one is not reusable, okay, and this is just the second flight of it. So we have some time since they will jump to the reusable technology, but right now, yes, this one is not reusable. And they are planning to upgrade this engine from, right now it produces 75 tons. They will be upgrading it to 84 tons of thrust, and then increasing the ISP also, which will bring the sun synchronous orbit payload capacity to around 2.8 tons. So that's the thing which they'll do. So this is this is the engine, RP1, LOX, gas generator cycle, which is evident from here, and looks very similar to Merlin because this is space program inspired by SpaceX. And the video which I was talking about is this one. I mean, there is no such space agency in this world, even the commercial space flight in this commercial program or company in this world, which is able to demonstrate their rocket engine so openly. Yes, we have Copenhagen suborbitals, but you know that is open source, so we can't say anything about it. But this is a national space program, and just see this video. I'll just stop talking now. So this is their full engine construction, like how this looks like. Now you will see the part wise construction, like what part is what. So let's just see that. You can see the oxidizer pump is in here, fuel pump is in here, and the pyrostarter is nothing but where this is nothing but the igniter. So here the igniter fluid and all those mechanism to combust the engine, fuel combust the, not the engine, obviously the fuels reside. So this is that. And gas generator, obviously the thing which is responsible to resolve the chicken and egg problem and drive the turbo pumps. And there you go. Since this using RP1 and locks, therefore the T tab is stored in here. You can see. Each and every part is in here, and now the cool part starts. The 4 of them in the first stage, which you can see here. The second stage has one of them, but a vacuum optimized one. So you can see that in here. And then the third stage has a 7-ton version, which you can see in here, again a vacuum optimized. Get ready now. I mean, the coolest video which I have ever seen in my life. RP1 is at the bottom tank, and this one is the liquid oxygen above here. You can literally see the isogrid structure in here. There you go. Oh man, that was something. That was definitely something. Burn their GPU. Yep, they did. I mean, just look at it, man. They literally, dissected their engine parts and showed it to us, like how the hell their engine is working. I mean, I'm so impressed with this video, and let me just tell you that this came in like 6 years ago. This animation was done 6 years ago. So hats off to them for making this so open to the public. So there's that animation. Now let's talk about the satellite which is going to the space. So this is the satellite going to the space, which has the satellite. There are 2 satellite basically. This is the performance verification satellite, which you can see in here, and this is how it looks like. And then this is nothing but a dummy satellite. So this one has no use, but this right now, this rocket has a capability of 1.5 tons, and right now they are not having a 1.5 ton satellite ready. So they have this performance verification satellite, which is nothing but a CubeSat deployer. So this CubeSat deployer has like 4 of the CubeSats, which we will talk about. And then this is the dummy satellite. This dummy satellite is nothing but, you can say, a mass simulator. Also has some instrumentation in it, so that the 1.5 ton mass is there on the rocket, so that they can verify that yes, our rocket can carry the maximum capacity to the orbit. Previously they had the failure. The first flight was a failure because they reached the 700 kilometer apogee, but they did not make it to the orbit because of the early engine shutdown of the third stage. So right now they will be trying to make that correct and reach the orbit this time. So talking about the secondary payload, so as I said, the first one is this one is the dummy, and this one is the performance verification satellite, and it is nothing but a CubeSat deployer. So these CubeSat are these one, which is a Step Cube Lab, is a 6U CubeSat developed at Chosun University, Korea. and Space Technology Experimental Project CubeSat Laboratory. That's the name of the full form of the STEP Cube. Then we have this Snuglight-II, which is a South Korean 2U CubeSat developed at Seoul National University for technology demonstration and amateur radio communication. Then we have this My Man, which is a 3U CubeSat for monitoring fine dust on the Korean Peninsula. And then we have this Randev, which is nothing but a 3U CubeSat, which will conduct an Earth development of the space program. So that's great. Now let's talk about the mission profile. So mission profile is, this is how it looks like. The liftoff happened at t+0 seconds, obviously, and then the first stage reaches the max Q. The MECO happens, and the MECO, after the MECO, the stage separation happens at 127 seconds, 59 kilometer altitude. The first stage is dropped into the ocean. The second stage then moves on. Second stage, after that, the removal of fairing happens at 191 kilometer altitude and 223 seconds. Then the second stage shut down and the third stage ignites, and the second stage obviously comes down. This happens at 274 seconds and 258 kilometer altitude. And after the third stage is burnt out, all the satellites are deployed. So there is no like SES-2 something like that, which means there is no reignition of the satellite, the engine. So everything is being deployed in just one go. So that is that which you can see in here. So finally at 967 seconds, altitude will be around 700 kilometer, and those two satellites will be deployed. Now I'll show you some more images of this beautiful looking Nuri rocket, which you can see in the transporter erector. This is how it is erected onto the launch pad. And yes, this is how it is transported, which you can see it is actually transported on the roads, on the normal roads in the hilly area. So transporting a big rocket is itself a very big challenge in these hill areas, but they have managed a solution, which you can see in here. And this is how the rocket looks like. And definitely those engines look like Merlin, but obviously this is a SpaceX inspired program, so no exceptions in that. Phew. Okay, so we have 100 that's I think it. Now let's have a look at the launch. There you go. T-minus 34 minutes, guys, and counting. Everything is looking great, which you can see here. We are watching live views of the rocket now. You can see the oxygen, the liquid oxygen is venting from the first stage, the second stage, as well as the third stage. So the liquid oxygen is there in all of them. RP1 is there as the secondary fuel, and yes, obviously. Okay. So I don't think so you will understand this one, but there is one more coverage which will start, but right now it has not started, which is an English coverage, but and that's a news coverage. So if you want, I will switch over to that. Yeah, otherwise this is just a raw coverage having all those rocket views and pure rocket technology. So yeah, that's.
하지만 누리호 3단 엔진의 조기 연소 종료로 최종 대도 속도에 이르지 못했습니다. 1차 발사의 실패 요인을 완벽하게 분석해 3단 산화제 탱크의 균열 원인을 찾아냈고 구조를 보강하는 새로운 설계를 적용했습니다.
저희가 지난 10월에 첫 발사를 진행을 했었고요. 그리고 그 뒤로 2개월 정도 해서 원인 분석 작업을 했었습니다. 그래서 올 1월부터 해서 저희가 그 문제가 있었습니다.
This is the construction of the rocket which you can see in here, and literally the construction is also inspired from SpaceX. So as I said, this whole program is inspired from SpaceX. So the construction, this vehicle assembly building looks very similar to what we have for SpaceX Falcon 9. And yes, since right now this is not reusable, but obviously reusability will be in their mind as they are looking in for the cost of this program. So yes, looks to be a lot of buildings and other structures close to the launch pad, and nope, I don't think so. Those are just, yeah, pad support buildings. Nobody is in there, so that's that.
누리호는 첫 발사에서 1.5톤의 위성 모사체만 실렸습니다. 2차 발사에서는 큐브 위성 4기를 포함한 성능 검증 위성을 위성 모사체와 함께 탑재합니다. 성능 검증 위성은 누리호의 우주궤도 투입 성능.
Gaming nerd, that's a good question. Basically, so talking about the onboard cameras, previous flight which they had some onboard cameras on it, so you can expect those. But so this is that satellite which I was talking about, the performance verification satellite, and it has those CubeSats, those four CubeSats. So that is nothing but CubeSat deployer, which would look like this, and then finally that dummy satellite would be deployed. So talking about the onboard cameras, yes, they will be having the onboard cameras. And why they are going to sun synchronous orbit? Because the Korean the launch pad, you can see, first of all, they have these ground stations and all those network coverage made to support you can see, made to support this sun synchronous orbit launch. So that's why they are going in for that. But right now they are actually aiming for this sun synchronous orbit, because they want to become a commercial space flight operator. So they want to demonstrate the sun synchronous orbit capability, and they know how to get in the orbit. Let me just tell you guys, this rocket is a KSLV-II. The KSLV-I rocket was a test rocket, had a first stage from the Russian Space Agency, but from that rocket they already got to know how to get into orbit. So those equations and those orbital mechanics are there, and they know how to deal with them. So they directly going into sun synchronous orbit can be a difficult task, but they know how to do it. That's why they are going in for that. The main problem for this KSLV-II rocket is it with its the technology, the engineering, because everything they have developed indigenously now, and now they have to test like every part, the mechanical part is working as they expected. So that is one thing which you need to look at. I don't use the Starlink one. It's not available in my country right now, but talks are in place. Maybe by 2023 they will have some, but yes, actually that would be very much useful for me. And there you go, this is a very beautiful pad which you can see in front of you. I just love this pad, I must say that, surrounded by the waters, and just at the hilly area which you can see here, just at the cliff basically, I must say here. And those towers which you can see are nothing but thunderstorm catching, the lightning catching towers as they say. And the rocket is standing tall on the pad waiting for T-minus 28 minutes for liftoff. Was there an issue with the launching from Korea, especially with the north? So this one is from South Korea. This rocket is launching from South Korea, and they will be going to the South Pole. Okay, so when they're going to sun synchronous orbit, most of the time the rockets go to the South Pole, because it's at the southern region water is more, but not at the northern region. That's not the case. So these rocket goes towards the South Pole, so will be going towards the South Pole and will not be hitting any country. So Marco Cram talking about the cost per launch. This rocket is made to have a very less cost. the total project cost, for development of this KSLV rocket was around $1.8 billion. That's it. you know it's very less in comparison to what we have in for other rockets. So $1.8 billion was the project cost, because you may see, you may look at it like, it's a very very costly project cost, but you need to understand they did not have any launch pad, no GSC, nothing. They have to develop everything from scratch, and obviously that would take money. So that was it. And regarding the cost per launch, we don't have the exact figures, but I would suggest it will be in standard with those from the Soyuz, the rates quoted by Soyuz, Vega or PSLV, because they need to be in that market, commercial market. So yes, yep, minus 26 minutes until the launch. Everything is looking good. So as I said, this one is carrying two satellites, two satellites. One is performance verification satellite, and as the name suggests, the performance verification satellite will be the one which will verify certain satellite standard, and this is the first flight in which they are carrying the satellite to space. Although they are also carrying a dummy one, but they are actually carrying the actual satellites to space. So good luck for them, and if they are successful, they will be the 7th country in this whole world to have an indigenous rocket capable of orbit. Recent updates of ISRO's Gaganyaan is that it's still in the works. I have just, sorry to say, but ISRO is I don't know what is happening inside ISRO. They are not very open right now. Things are changing, but recent development is this only, that by 2023, the next year, you can see one unmanned flight of the Gaganyaan. So it's sleeping, I know, but that's how it is. So yep. Is it privately funded or publicly Hamburg? So this is a space program from Korean space government, South Korean government. So this is not privately or publicly funded, nothing like that. Or you can say publicly funded. Yes, it's a government's agency, so that is that. And yes, they Korean Space Agency is looking forward to have the space program capable of touching great heights of like many nations, those developing nations as well as developed nations. So they are very fond of this space program now and accelerating it very quickly. They have also signed this Artemis Accord to help NASA and humans to go back to the moon. In 2030, they have signed a contract with NASA to launch one satellite to the moon, which will support the Artemis mission. So by 2030, they need to get this rocket all ready, and they need to improve this rocket as well to be capable of sending some satellite to the moon. So that is that. So we things are looking good, although that English coverage has not started for some reason. I don't think it will be starting, so that's that. But right now things are looking good, and we are hoping that it would not suffer the fate of that naughty boy from Astra. That guy is very naughty and just does not stop with its shenanigans, right? Keep on doing some sort of mistakes and all those. But yeah, the KSLV-II rocket or the Nuri rocket is ready right now, and hopefully this will make to the orbit without any glitch. And I am actually very confident because last time they literally just made it to the orbit by just few margins. They were not able to do that because they had some issue with the helium tank. Basically what happened previously was, in the previous flight, the first stage performance was nominal, second stage performance was nominal, third stage had an early engine shutdown because there was no proper pressure inside the third stage tank. So there was some problem with the helium tank responsible for pressurizing the fuel tank of that rocket, the third stage. So because of that, there was an early engine shutdown. It did reach that 700 kilometer apogee, but did not make it to the orbit. It got shut down like 46 seconds before that.
여러분 안녕하세요. 2022년 6월 21일 한국형 발사체 누리호가 드디어 두 번째 도전에
So guys,
나섭니다.
if there is any Korean person in here on the chat, please do translation for us. It would be great if you can do that.
과학기술
I'm still looking in
정보통신부
for some English coverage. If I can find out, I'll switch over to that.
누리호 2차 발사에 대해 설명해 주실 한국항공우주연구원 김진혁 박사님 자리해 주셨습니다.
안녕하세요. 한국형 발사체 개발사업본부 엔진개발부에서 근무 중인 김진혁 연구원입니다.
네, 안녕하세요 박사님.
네, 안녕하세요 사무관님.
네, 저희가 누리호 2차 발사를 중계하기 위해 고흥에 위치한 나로 우주센터에 와 있는데요.
네, 맞습니다.
지금 저희 눈앞에 누리호가 보이고 있는데
맞습니다. 저희에서 바로 2km 떨어진
네.
눈앞에 제2발사대 그리고 누리호가 우뚝 서 있습니다.
네, 박사님께서는 지난 1차 발사 때도 중계에 나서 주셨는데
네네.
지난번 1차 발사 장면을 유튜브에서만 300만 시청자가 봐주셨다고 합니다.
300만이나요?
네.
아, 그렇게 정말 많은 분들께서 발사를 지켜보셨다고 하니까 이 누리호 발사에 대한 관심이 정말 대단한 것 같네요. 네.
네, 지난 1차 발사를 보셨던 많은 분들께서 누리호의 비행을 응원해 주셨는데요.
네네.
누구보다 누리호를 만드는데 직접 참여하셨던 박사님의 그 당시 심정은 어떠셨을지 가장 궁금합니다.
네, 이 누리호 첫 발사를 지켜보면서 저는 정말 감격스러웠습니다. 그리고 무엇보다도 아까 300만이라고 말씀을 해주셨는데 정말 많은 분들께서 누리호 발사를 응원해 주시고 또 격려해 주신 점에 대해서 또 이 자리를 빌려 깊은 감사 인사 드립니다. 또 여러분들 덕분에 저희 누리호 연구 개발진도 정말 가슴 벅찬 그런 시간이 되었던 것 같습니다.
네, 그 당시에도 굉장히 떨리셨을 것 같은데
네네.
2차 발사를 하는 오늘은 또 기분이 다르실 것 같아요.
이 떨리는 마음은 사실 지난번 발사 때와 비슷한데요.
네.
아무래도 이번 발사가 두 번째 도전이다 보니까 성공에 대한 그런 기대감을
Okay, so I guess it would work now. Hopefully, you'll be able to listen to the English coverage now. Okay, T-minus 18 minutes. Things are looking great. This is the Nuri rocket in front of you.
Over 11 years in the making, $1.7 billion in development program, South Korea's new three-stage liquid-fueled KSLV-II Nuri rocket currently stands on its launch pad at the Naro Space Center down in Kohung at the southern tip of the country for its second blast-off ahead of its scheduled 4 p.m. liftoff, this time carrying a rocket performance verification satellite and 4 cube satellites. Our team is down at the Naro Space Center. Our very own Han Sung-woo has been following the making and lead up to the historic moments. Now, Sung-woo, what's left for engineers to do now that the rocket is fueled and ready to go?
Konyong, all that's left is blastoff. So 4 p.m., the fuel and oxidizers have been connected, have been injected into Nuri for blastoff. Blastoff will happen 4 p.m. That was announced just an hour ago. The Ministry of Science and ICT announced at the press center here in Naro Space Center, Gohung Jeollanam-do province, that Nuri's historic second launch will take place at 4 p.m. as initially planned. Like you said, there were definitely hiccups along the way. We've been talking about technical... Like you said, there have definitely been hiccups along the way. Technical glitches, strong winds, most notably that technical glitch, the oxidizer level sensor, but that's been solved. And today, everything's indicating the launch will be a success. No rain, no strong winds with wind speeds at just around 5 meters per second, much lower than Nuri's threshold of 15. Taking that into account, the Launch Management Committee concluded this morning that final preparations for the launch would proceed as planned. And now here we are. The skies and sea have been cleared. Nuri's been injected with fuel and oxidizer, like I said. Its director has been removed, and last-minute inspections are just about complete. In less than 20 minutes, South Korea's first entirely domestically developed space rocket will blast off into the skies, carrying with it 5 actual satellites this time, part of a 1.5-ton payload that includes a 1.3-ton dummy satellite.
Right, so we're a little bit over 15 minutes away from liftoff. I'm sure engineers have been looking forward to this moment for a very long time. Now, those engineers on the ground, what do they have left to do?
So what's left to do, actually, this is an extension of your previous question. I want to say that 10 minutes before liftoff, everything's computerized, so no longer in the hands of engineers. This is the beginning of the automatic pre-launch operation system. The launch is not, like I said, not in the hands of manual labor anymore, meaning the engineers cannot manually abort the system once it kicks in. Rather, the system will put a halt to the launch sequence automatically if it detects an issue before liftoff. Nuri will soar into the skies with power from 4 75-ton liquid fuel engines in its first stage, 1 75-ton liquid fuel engine in its second, and 1 7-ton liquid fuel engine in its third, all developed by Hanwha Aerospace.
Okay, so this is something.
But if successful, the launch will make South Korea the 7th country in the world independently capable of sending a satellite weighing over a ton into orbit using domestic technology. That's all I have for now, but I'll be back after the launch for more. Back to you, Ganyo.
Right, our Han Sung-woo with the latest on the Nuri space launch from the Gohung Space Center. Well, so that is a lead up to the liftoff. We have 15 minutes remaining until the liftoff of the second launch of the KSLV-II Nuri. But the entire journey has been really 12 years in the making, as the first space rocket, this one, is developed entirely by domestic technology. The project to develop Nuri began more than 12 years ago. Our Ji-young helps us trace the developments from inception to today.
That's great. So
It was in March of 2010 that the
Okay.
government decided to
So
develop
guys, if you are
Nuri's
just
own
joining in,
rocket with no
you
outside
are looking at
Specifically,
the
goal was to
Korea's
turn
attempt,
down
South Korea's
the
attempt to
rocket into a
indigenously launch its
vehicle that can carry a
homegrown rocket
1.5-ton
to the
application
space. And
satellite
previously,
into low orbit.
the KSLV Flight 1 had some problem with the third stage, but right now they are looking in good for their launch. And this engine looks very similar to the SpaceX Merlin engine, and yes, it is similar because this is inspired by SpaceX. This whole space program is inspired by SpaceX. So yep, that is the case here, which you can see. And the best part is they are developing the engine directly on a semi-cryogenic based. They are not looking in for solid boosters or those hypergolic fuels. Nope, nothing like that. So this was the KSLV-I rocket, which had the Russian first stage and the second stage of the indigenously developed second stage. That was the test flight to make sure they know how to reach to the orbit.
This made South Korea only the 7th country in the world to have its own liquid-fueled medium to large-sized engine. But sending Nuri into space for the first time would take a total of 5 of these engines. When it lifted off in October 2021, the nation was transfixed. But in this first test, it felt a bit short. The 7-ton engine in the third stage stopped burning around 40 seconds too soon, which meant the dummy satellite did not reach the intended orbit. But just before the launch, a scientist had told me this was just the beginning.
Even if we don't succeed this time around, we will be gaining a lot of new technology. We can analyze the aspects where we succeeded and the ones where we didn't and improve on them to make the second one a success.
The second launch was already scheduled at that point for mid-2022, so scientists analyzed the problems and worked hard to fix them. And on June 9th, with fingers crossed, the third stage was attached to the rocket. The second launch was then planned on June 15th, but got delayed due to technical faults. The Korea Aerospace Research Institute canceled the launch after the sensor was seen malfunctioning due to a final pre-launch checkup at the launch pad in Naro Space Center in Kohung and rescheduled the launch of its first indigenously made rocket for the second time ever on June 21st. We'll know whether it was a success or not about an hour and 45 minutes after liftoff. 엄지영, 아리랑 뉴스.
Well, with the launch of Nuri scheduled for today, attention is now focused on the event being a successful one on the first go. But how exactly does the homegrown rocket make its way to space? Our Song Yu-jin guides us through the entire journey.
South Korea's first homegrown space rocket, Nuri, will take off on Tuesday for what'll be its second launch. Attention is focused on whether South Korea will become the world's 7th country that can launch a satellite into orbit weighing more than a ton. But what happens once Nuri is launched? The 200-ton vehicle is made up of 3 stages. The first, at the very bottom, will separate from the vehicle around 2 minutes after
So
launch.
the first stage has 4 engines in it. KRV-75 engines.
Satellites on board will be deployed at around 4 minutes at an altitude of 191 kilometers. The Stage 2 rocket will break away at around 4.5 minutes, 258 kilometers above the Earth's surface. If everything goes as planned, Nuri will reach its target altitude of 700 kilometers at 14 minutes and 57 seconds. Then the separation of the third stage will begin, starting with the 180-kilogram performance verification satellite. It's a new addition to the launch, as the first try last year only included a dummy. The satellite will also include 4 smaller cube satellites, which it will shoot out to orbit. This will be the first time in history for a satellite to shoot out another satellite. And finally, about 2 minutes later, the 1.3-ton dummy satellite will separate at the same altitude. It will take about half an hour to assess whether both satellites successfully parted from Nuri. 송유진, 아리랑 뉴스.
So that's
Well,
a good
for
question.
those of
Has
you
Korea
just
not
joining
made it
us,
to the
we
orbit
are
before? They have made it to the orbit, but this time, if they are successful, then they will be able to make it to the orbit with their homegrown technology. So that's that.
In the studio, Professor An Jae-myung, Associate Professor of Aerospace Engineering from KAIST. Professor An, good to have you with us.
Good afternoon.
Now, I have news coming in from the Naro Space Center that PLO has just kicked in. 10 minutes to, or less than 10 minutes to launch or liftoff. What does that mean?
Well, so before 10 minutes, actually everything is based on the automatic sequence, so the human interruption is not allowed. So actually the sequence will judge if the launch can be continued or they have to stop. So that means we cannot do anything and currently.
So PLO has kicked in, which means that the liftoff will undergo as planned, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So the which means simply that the countdown is transferred to the internal not the internal but the computer. Therefore, it will be able to monitor everything, and nothing is manual. So computer will be checking all the checklists which is there, and if there is any problem, then there will be an automatic halt. There is no manual halt now. Maybe a range or a weather issue could have a manual hold, but not a technical one.
There is no specific technical problem, so I think that the condition is very favorable so far. So far so good.
So right
What
now
are
you
some of
can
the factors
see
that will determine
the live views of the rocket.
a rocket launch like such? What are some of the factors that determine the success of a rocket launch like Nuri?
Okay, so actually, there are some kind of situations that can prevent the success of the launch, like the weather, and also there are some situations that the space debris. So that's very significant these days. So actually, the probability of the collision with the debris should be low enough. And actually, there is some probability of the struck by the lightning, and that kind of the issues should be cleared. And I heard that so far.
Yes, Arpit, next ISRO launch is scheduled right now for June 30, hopefully. So you will see that.
The launch.
Yep.
The Nuri, KSLV-II Nuri carried a dummy satellite, so it was able to reach a certain orbit, but it failed to place that dummy satellite in orbit, if I'm correct. Now, what is the difference this time, and what kind of factors were improved in this launch?
So actually, that was because of some failure in the supporting structure of the high pressure helium tank inside of the third stage. And I heard that the supporting structure for the high pressure tank was kind of revised in this time. And actually, the engineers worked very hard days and night to identify the cause of the problem, and they made it, finally figured out the measures to correct the problem in short time. So actually, they should be truly appreciated, and I think that they will make no problem in this time.
So what's different about this launch is also that there is an actual satellite, or in fact, there are 4 small satellites, am I correct?
Right. Yeah.
4 small satellites on that rocket, which that rocket will carry into space. Tell us a little bit about that.
So actually, the 4 little satellite that is called as the CubeSat, and the CubeSat is also very small satellite implemented on cubes of the 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter and 10 centimeter. So that the cube is called as 1U, and today, 4 CubeSats developed by 4 schools in Korea will be on board. And one is by 6U satellite developed by Joseon University, and 3 of the 3U satellite developed by Seoul National University, and KAIST and Yonsei will be on board as well.
Were you involved in the project?
Unfortunately, no.
So, talking about how a satellite can launch another satellite, so there is a thing called a CubeSat deployer, which we have already in those transporter mission from SpaceX, even the PSLV mission from ISRO. They have the deployer because CubeSats are very small, and sometimes they don't, and they are mostly flown in a rideshare configuration. So sometimes what happens, they don't have that proper orbit in which they want to go. So what they do is they in the cube, in those cases, a CubeSat deployer comes into place, wherein there is a propulsion system as well as a deployer system inside a proper satellite, which is capable of providing battery support, instrumentation, connectivity support, and all those things. So it has that, and once it reaches a proper orbit, then it can launch, or you can say it can deploy. I won't say launch, but it can deploy those CubeSats from inside that satellite. So sometimes it is because of the orbit, sometimes it is just that there is not enough deploying mechanism in place for small cubesats. So you need to have a proper deployer system in place, and there are many deployers, private deployers, basically nanoracks, deorbit, and all those things. So similar to that, we will be having in this mission, in which we will be having one CubeSat deployer, which will in fact have those things which are needed for the launch or deploy. The instrumentation, the connectivity, even some scientific sensors too.
Propulsion rocket that relied on the Russian technology, and South Korea only developed the second stage, which is solid propulsion rocket. But Nuri, on the other hand, is a three-stage rocket, and all of these stages are liquid propulsion system. And most importantly, actually, we developed all of them. And in terms of the payload that can be put into the orbit, actually there are some difference. Naro can put only the 100 kilogram of the payload to the low Earth orbit, but the Nuri can put 1.5 ton of the payload to 7 kilometers.
So we are under 2 minutes, guys. Things are looking great for the launch. We will be seeing this rocket finally lifting off from the launch pad in just under 2 minutes.
Actually, in the previous launch last year, actually we only had the dummy mass, which is called as mass simulator. But in this, launch attempt, we have the verification satellite, performance verification satellite. Actually, that is used to verify the performance of the Nuri launch vehicle to put the payload to the orbit. And also, it has some kind of the subsystems that has been developed for new technology.
T-1 minute and 12 seconds, guys. This is happening finally. If you have just joined in, this is a 3-stage rocket capable of putting 1.5 tons to the orbit. And right now, we are under a minute until this launches. So this is happening.
About a minute away from liftoff. So when you were on the ground last week, when we were attempting for the first liftoff of the KSLV-II this time around, what was the atmosphere
Just
there
a second,
like?
guys.
I mean, how do you think the engineers are feeling right now with a minute away?
Well, so actually, I myself was a rocket engineer at KARI between 1999 and 2004. And the majority of the development team actually who have been working for the Nuri was my colleague. And I'd like to thank them for their efforts and passion throughout the procedure of the development.
17,
and
16,
I think that now is
15,
about
14, 13,
seconds.
12, 11, 10, 9,
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
mission
1.
and liftoff.
이유가 발사되었습니다.
This one is this one gave me something. Go KSLV-II to the orbit. Godspeed KSLV-II. Nuri rocket is on its way to space. Right now, everything is looking great. We are... Wow, those KRV 75 engines are looking good.
Wow. So apparently, so the flight is in normal operation. So that's good to hear. So it's a phenomenal flight.
Wow.
I was here myself.
So right now the vehicle is looking in for the max Q, which will happen very soon. Everything is looking nominal as per now. You can see the tracking shot, and it has already begun the pitch over maneuver, which we can see. And those 4 engines are working great. This is nothing but a contrail which happens, which is a nominal thing. So don't worry about it. Everything is looking nominal right now. And yes, that plume is expanding as it ascending up the space, and which we can see right now. It has 4 engines in the first stage, and that's why you can see that plus sign beginning to form. And it will be running in for around T plus 2 minutes and 7 seconds for the first stage. Then it will um, um, cut off, the MECO will happen and the second stage engine will start up. So right now things are looking good. The plume has expanded a lot now. Everything is looking great. A T plus 1 minute 55 seconds. Hopefully they'll switch over to the onboard cam. There you go, MECO and the stage separation and the second engine start. There you go.
Reception of the first,
Max Q is done now. They have the stage 1 separation happened. The stage 2 is ignited.
They have just confirmed that they have seen the firing of the second engine. Does that mean, is that good news?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so they have just confirmed on the ground, and we are
Mission
hearing
control looks
engineers applauding from the site.
비행 정상, 고도 100km 통과.
Okay, so they have just surpassed an altitude of 100 kilometers.
The
So that's
fairing
also
deploy
good
is the
news.
next event, which will happen at T plus 2 minute 53 seconds. We won't be able to see it obviously from here. But previously they had the onboard cameras, but for this reason, for some reason they don't have for this time. But right now it is looking good.
They are on the watch out for.
So actually,
The fairing has been deployed, guys. Hopefully the event has passed, so that is that. The stage 2 will operate for T plus 4 minute 34 seconds, and then it will separate, which we will be able to see.
The kind of the events should be successfully fulfilled. So actually, maybe they are the feeling, they are kind of the milestones that they are watching out. But at the same time, actually, when you are on site, actually, when the Liftoff, the launch take place, actually, you can feel the vibration.
Yep, the third
from
stage
the
is the key. Previously it failed because of the third stage only. So the second stage separation is coming in very shortly now.
Last time telling me that they really felt the ground shake like an earthquake, and that was a phenomenal experience. Now, we are just confirming that the separation of fairing took place, and what does that mean?
So the payload fairing is the cover that is protecting the satellite from the outer kind of the damage. So actually, when the payload fairing is separated, and it means that when the velocity and altitude is fulfilled and is ready to separate the
Now the
satellite into
second
the
stage should have separated. We can see
Right.
we have
So the stage 2 rocket
is
has just
separated
broken
now.
away, I believe,
And
it's
now the
been
third stage
about
should light up.
4.5 minutes.
But hopefully we have
Stage
just
2
lost it
separation at 4.5
because
minutes.
it's
That's
not
also
visible in
as
here.
planned.
고도
Plan, that's
400km
right, yeah.
통과. 3, 2, 엔진 점화. 26. 누리호가 발사되었습니다.
What are we seeing? So if you look at the
Okay, so
monitor, we are
that is
seeing
one thing which we
what are
didn't
seeing on
get
the
to
monitor
see.
right now?
Hopefully that third stage ignited properly.
Yeah, so we are seeing a replay of
Previously
the
they
liftoff.
had the
So
onboard
about
cameras.
5
I don't know
minutes,
why
after
they are
blast
not
off,
having
we
for
just
this time.
heard that
And we were able to see the onboard
has broken
views,
away
but not
as
now.
planned, so it's going fairly well so far.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's
that's right. So from now on, actually, the ignition of the third stage should be done correctly, and the full duration combustion of the third stage is important, and that should
Wow.
be cut off at the right timing. I mean, when it satisfies the altitude condition and velocity condition as well.
So if we remember last time, so back in October, do you remember when it was that we actually detected that something had gone wrong? At which minute was that? Do you remember?
Honestly, actually, I thought that went well. I mean, until
So
the
the
president
third stage
announced
has
that.
ignited as per the plan, but we need to wait for the whole third stage to commence its operation, because just 46 seconds before the completion of this burn, it did an early shutdown previously, and hopefully that is not going to happen. And if it is successful, Okay, then we'll talk about that. If it is successful, then we'll talk about it.
Duration of the third stage, kind of burning was a little bit shorter than planned, but I thought that that could happen.
So the duration of the third stage, how long should that take?
Okay,
Just so that our
yeah,
viewers
that's
know
great.
what's right.
300
Yeah.
What to
kilometer
look
normal
out for.
flight
So
altitude.
that is 500 and something second, and actually in last time actually that was about 40 seconds short. Yeah.
So
And
it was
actually-
40 seconds shy of the actual.
That's right, yeah. And actually that means actually the smaller kind of the final velocity.
Altitude
Actually,
is
the
400
final
kilometer.
velocity of
Where are you
the
getting this update? That's great if it is
5 kilometer per sec.
performing.
Actually, if we convert
500.
it to a kind of the familiar unit, actually that amounts to 27,000 kilometers per hour. So actually, we know that actually the KTX, the high-speed train, is moving at the speed of the 300 kilometers per hour. So actually, that means about 90 times faster than the KTX. It is kind of the amazing speed.
Right, wow.
Yeah, but actually, because of this some very small amount of the shortage in the velocity, we could not make the full circulation of the orbit as planned. So that's why the third stage, the shortage in the third stage is making only the partial success.
So we're about 8 minutes after blastoff, and we are hearing that it has surpassed the 500 kilometer mark. Does that mean good news?
Good news, yeah.
Yeah. So it is traveling at an appropriate speed.
I think so. But
So what is another landmark time that we should be on the lookout for? When should we check back in with our Nuri?
so the kind of the
500 kilometer has been reached. It has to reach 700 kilometer orbit. So that is that. But right now it has reached 500 kilometer.
PVSat,
And this burn is scheduled to end at around T+14 minutes or something like that. So
Everything goes as planned at about 15th minute, so at about 4:15 Korea time, the Nuri will reach its target altitude of about 700 kilometers. Am I correct?
That is right. Yeah.
Right, so that's another point that we should be on the lookout for, and we'll be back right after
600
this.
kilometer reached. Okay, guys, we have. Let me just take a breath. Okay, the coverage was not so good, I must say that, but you can't expect much from a news operators, so it's all right. So let me just try to fill in the gaps. So guys, we just saw the beautiful liftoff of the Nuri rocket, or the KSLV-II rocket, from the Naro Space Center, and everything worked perfectly fine with the first stage. Those four KARI 075 engines worked perfectly fine, reached max Q, stage separation happened, the second stage engine kicked in, and the second stage is working perfectly fine also.
And I want to check back in with our Han Sung-woo at the Nuri Space or Naro Space Center.
Okay, we'll get some updates now.
Now, Sung-woo, what a sight that was! I mean, Nuri blasting off into
650
space. I
kilometers,
imagine the Naro Space Center was in high spirits and currently is in high spirits right now. It's been around 10 minutes since blastoff. Where is Nuri at this moment?
Well, Kon-young, it's still flying, obviously, but what landmark moment we have to remember is that just before, check that, reaching 900 seconds, that's 15 minutes after liftoff. That's the key point we should be remembering. That's when the performance satellite holding 4 mini cube satellites will be separated from the third stage at Nuri's target altitude of 700 kilometers. And 70 seconds later, the 1.3-ton weight simulator or dummy satellite will be separated as well. As you said, 10 minutes have passed. Several minutes have passed since liftoff. So at this point, the rocket's first 2 stages, along with the payload fairing that refers to the protective protective sheath protecting the dummy satellite and the performance verification satellite, have all fallen off. Whether Nuri succeeds in its mission of sending them into orbit will be decided at around 16 minutes 16 minutes after launch, and this will be briefed by the Ministry of Science and ICT at around 5:10 p.m. at the press center here.
What launch vehicle is Nuri comparable to? It has 1.5 tons to low Earth, the sun synchronous orbit. So it's like a medium launcher. So it's comparable to PSLV, the Vega C launcher, but obviously not Electron.
Considering a technical glitch inside the rocket was addressed in just a couple of days last week. That's why we say it's a miracle. Luckily for everyone involved, especially engineers working in
talking about the coverage, guys, let me just tell you that they are doing this coverage for the second time now. Okay, so and they have just this new space program, this new rocket, so they might not be able to do all those things which you require, but I am here to fill in the gaps, so you can ask me anything and I'll try to cover all the gaps, fill all the gaps for you, and provide all the technical knowledge that you need. So right now it is at as they said, 650 kilometer is achieved. We are looking in for 700 kilometers sun synchronous orbit, and around just before 15 minutes we'll see if the mission is success or not. Right now it is going as per the plan.
Miraculously replacing the sensor's core, and not the sensor itself, was enough to do the job, erasing the need for them to disassemble the rocket and allowing the country to launch Nuri within its alternative launch window, the last day ending this Thursday.
Right, it was really a nail biter because the window was just until the 23rd, and today being the 21st. I mean, amazing it is, and what a relief. I mean, Sungwoo, you and our team,
confirmation of third stage engine combustion stop. That is good, which means it must have achieved that orbit. If that is the case. Okay, something that is great to hear, I must say that. Shutdown confirmed. The Nuri is in orbit. Guys, I am getting unofficial news. The Nuri is in orbit. Just waiting for the official confirmation to happen. And also we need to wait in for those satellites to deploy, and if they are able to deploy it, confirmation of target trajectory, that is great, which means they have achieved the orbit this time. Just waiting for their satellite to separate now.
On the Artemis program that South Korea under the previous Moon Jae-in administration committed to participating in. The Artemis program is a US-led international space exploration program that aims to make manned lunar exploration possible by 2025 and construct a manned lunar base by 2028. And in the long term,
that is not happening. That is not happening. Base is not happening.
Also agreed at the time to foster joint research in space exploration and back the development of the Korean Positioning System, or KPS, Korea's own version of the GPS. Completion of the KPS would mean South Korea would have a steady supply of information regarding time and navigation location near the Korean peninsula, information essential to the fourth industrial revolution. And by the end of the year, the two countries plan on holding their third civil space dialogue as well and work towards a safe, secure, and sustainable space environment. I think we can say that Nuri's launch, along with the 4 launches lying ahead until 2027, can be an igniter, can be a catalyst for all these space developments that Koreans can look forward to in the future. Back to you,
Confirmation of normal separation of the performance verification. Okay, that is good. Now the dummy satellite separation is still left. And if that happens,
hands in space as well. And we are just finding out that in the 13th minute, 13 and a half, Nuri has reached its target altitude of 700 kilometers. In minutes from now, South Korea's homegrown rocket Nuri will be reaching its target altitude, or it has reached its target altitude, and we will know for sure whether this has been a success in the next half an hour or so. But how and when will we know whether success or the launch has been a complete success or partial one? Our Kim Do-yeon has the details.
Dummy sat is also separated, guys. Finally, the Nuri rocket has done it. Korea has become the 7th country in this world to independently launch a rocket into the orbit or a satellite into the orbit from its indigenously developed technology. Oh, that's a great milestone to have. Finally, they have this rocket capable of putting satellites into the orbit, which will accelerate the Korean space program phenomenally. And I am so happy right now. This is the PBSat which you are seeing in front of you, which is carrying the CubeSats. So finally, it's a success. We still are waiting in for the official confirmation, but the mission control and the unofficial people have said it. The MISAT and the PVSat is confirmed, separated in its targeted orbit. So finally, it has happened. Okay, that was something. 700-kilometer sun synchronous orbit is achieved, and let me tell you, sun synchronous orbit is quite difficult to achieve than low earth orbit, and they did it in their second try. Oh god, so they are on their way, I must say that. Now you will see the improvements in this KSLV set rocket launcher, in which they will try to increase the thrust of these the engine, the KARI 75 engine, which will from 75 tons to 84 tons. They will also increase the ISP slightly, which will increase the payload capacity from right now 1.5 tons to around 2.8 tons. So that is a significant increase, let me tell you. And that would be great if it is able to do that.
To make this launch historical. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
So, Professor Ahn, we are just finding out that we have confirmed the separation of the dummy satellite. Am I correct?
Yeah, actually, I heard that there is we confirmed that the separation of the PVSat performance verification satellite around 15 minutes, and also we also confirmed that the separation of the dummy mass, which took place around 60 minutes from the liftoff. So, actually, I think that now the Nuri has done everything that it has to do.
So what is left for us to really determine the success of this journey?
So actually, I think that the confirmation means actually the position, the altitude of the 700 kilometer, and the velocity subject to 7.5 kilometer per sec. Condition is satisfied, and that's why that is successfully separated at the right timing. And the remaining thing that we have to check is the communication between the satellite and the ground station. Actually, I think that there will be the first communication between satellite and the King Sejong station around the South Pole in about 42 minutes from the lift off.
Right. So in order for us to get a complete or final confirmation of success, we will have to wait until the 42nd minute, where there will be a communication between a satellite and South Korea's Antarctic Research Station.
Yeah, that's right.
Which we will have to
Thanks, Wildflower, for joining in. But we're still waiting in for the official confirmation and the speech from the, I don't know what the guy was. I don't recall him, but he's an important person, and you will get to know some important developments in the space program too. So you can stay in here, and we'll get to know about proper success at around this time. Because right now, you must be wondering, like, we have already, confirmed it has reached orbit. Then what is the delay? So the delay is to get to the, ground station. First of all, connection with the ground station, which will happen at around that time. And that will ensure that the satellite is healthy, and if the satellite is healthy, the mission will be 100% success. So otherwise, if the satellite is not healthy, there might be problem with the satellite, or there might be some problem with the rocket itself, that it produce some, you know, unwanted vibrations or unwanted acceleration. So we'll have to wait and see. That's what we are waiting for. But hopefully everything has gone as per the plan. It is, I would say, it is right now 95% successful only, so it's not a problem.
And actually, each of the CubeSat will be released after 8 days of the
Yeah,
liftoff.
it's not a polar orbit, proper polar orbit. It's a sun synchronous orbit, but it's not a 90-degree orbit. But you can kind of say it's a polar orbit only. It's not a equatorial, it's kind of polar only.
Korean companies have launched themselves into space business to develop 6G communication and lunar exploration technology, which all this will be happening after the liftoff, and the liftoff will lead to the opening of a new chapter in 6G technology and of all sorts. The plan now is to increase South Korea's market share by developing giant antennas and multi-orbit satellites. Ian Jin explains.
A giant satellite antenna with a diameter of 27.4 meters is South Korea's National Registered Cultural Heritage number 436. In 1970, it became South Korea's first to provide satellite communications to 7 overseas countries. The KOMPSAT Satellite Service Center in Chungcheongnam-do Province, operated by domestic telecommunications firm KTSAT, has now grown into the largest of its kind in Asia, with 45 giant antennas and 5 satellites. With a network that covers 60% of the world, KTSAT provides high-speed satellite data, broadcasting, and marine communications, and has launched a space data business that combines artificial intelligence.
기술진들이 누리호로부터 받은 비행 관련 데이터를 정밀 분석 중에 있습니다. 데이터 분석에는 앞으로 약 30분이 소요될 예정입니다.
So it will take around 30 minutes. After data analysis, we will give you additional briefing to tell you the flight journey and the performance, as well as if it had reached the target and the communication. Thank you very much.
Okay, so they are right now analyzing the data.
We had to cut off our report because there was an announcement on site by the Ministry of Science and Technology on when it will be that they will determine the success of the Nuri's journey. And they said that it will take about half an hour to analyze the data after the communication has been done. So that is that. And joining me now is Wendy Cobb, Associate Professor of Strategy and Security Studies, U.S. Air Force School of Advanced Air and Space Studies. She will give us an analysis of the situation and a comparison of the situation here in Korea and in the United States. Wendy, it's great to have you with us.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, I remember speaking to you back in October as well, but I'd like to first start with this question. I mean, why do nations build national launch systems?
When the space era first opened up in the 1950s, a lot of it was about advancing international prestige and a country's reputation, particularly in the context of the Cold War. And so you had the United States and the Soviet Union really competing to demonstrate to the world whose country, whose government, whose style of governing was better. Of course, the development of all of this technology has advanced since then. We've found many purposes for space-based systems and space technology. And so while there is still an element of international prestige, because as you've been mentioning, there's only a handful of countries that can do this. This is a very difficult thing to do. And the fact that a country can do it is a really big statement. So I think South Korea should be very proud in this moment that this is something that only a few countries can say they've done. And so so there is absolutely that element of prestige and reputation, but there's also a lot of economic development that comes from space technologies today. The space economy is growing, both here in the United States and worldwide. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry with projections upwards of $1 trillion by 2040. And so while it still does have a lot of military governing communications capabilities, the economic input that this has is really important moving forward.
So how does the KSLV-II stand in comparison to other systems around the world?
So, the Nuri is designed to take about 3 tons of payload to low Earth orbit. Then if you think about that in comparison to SpaceX's Falcon 9, which is the primary launch vehicle we're seeing here in the United States today, they can take about 3 times as much payload to higher orbits and even to Mars orbit. So, Nuri certainly isn't as powerful as some of the rockets we're seeing come online today. But it's absolutely a great start. You don't just start by building a super powerful rocket. You have to start from using those building blocks and getting the experience and figuring out what works. And so to the extent that you can get to low Earth orbit, I mean, that's a fantastic achievement in and of itself, because it really does set you down on this path towards a greater potential. Another big difference between Nuri and some of the other rockets we're seeing is the reusability. For many decades, we've used expendable launch vehicles where you get one use out of them and you essentially throw them away. What SpaceX and Blue Origin are pioneering are these reusable rocket systems, and so there's a lot of new rockets that are coming online. The Vulcan here in the United States. There's a new Ariane rocket being developed by the European Space Agency, and they're building on reusability. So that's another big difference. But again, you have to get these basics down first before you can advance into these more complex systems.
Now, Wendy, if you remember back in October, we called that a partial success because it failed to place the dummy satellite in the targeted orbit. What kind of improvements do you see from then and now?
In terms of performance, the focus, I don't think, was very much on improving performance, but on demonstrating that it can be done. So I think the focus between last launch and this one was really fixing the structural problem that contributed to the partial success last time in terms of reinforcing the third stage tanks, which is what caused the issue in the fall. And I think they've gone ahead and done that. And I think the fact that they were able to adapt and change and recover as quickly as they did, both from the fall and then from the technical issues last week, really says something about what that capability is and how knowledgeable and how skilled the workers are on the ground. These things are incredibly complex, and there are technical glitches all the time. And so understanding that and knowing that that's going to happen, I think it's really important to have that ability to recover quickly. And I think that's really what is impressive to me between fall and even last week to today, that they were able to pull that and turn it around as quickly as they did.
Now, finally, what does the future hold in space exploration?
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be thinking about space. The United States, as you mentioned just a little while ago, is really looking forward to its Artemis program of returning humans to the moon. Just yesterday here in the United States, NASA was out testing its Space Launch System, which is their giant moon rocket that's designed to help get us back to the moon. And they had their fair share of technical issues yesterday as well. And in fact, it was their second go at doing what they call a wet dress rehearsal in advance of a test launch later this year. So I think that's really exciting. SpaceX here in the United States is also working on its own system to get to the moon and eventually to Mars, Starship. There's several other companies here in the United States who are working towards human spaceflight. Blue Origin, ULA, Boeing has a Starliner capsule that'll be taking astronauts to the space station, hopefully in the near future. And so I think there's a lot in terms of this exploration paradigm in getting to the moon, hopefully within the decade. That being said, it's very difficult to time a lot of these things because delays happen. You come up to these unexpected issues. And so, I think there's a lot happening coming up, even in terms of satellites with Starlink's, SpaceX's mega constellation, bringing communications and internet around the world. And so there's a lot of launches going on. I just saw one here in Florida just the other night, and they're happening very regularly and routinely. And I think that says a lot about making space a normal, everyday thing.
Wendy Cobb, Associate Professor at U.S. Air Force School of Advanced Air and Space Studies. Thank you so much for your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, as Wendy explained, American aerospace company SpaceX leads the global commercial space launch vehicle market with its reusable rockets. South Korea also has plans to develop a reusable rockets of its own as a follow-up to the successful launch of Nuri. Although this is Nuri's second mission, it's not a reusable rocket and was partly rebuilt ahead of today's launch.
Dude, Nitro, please stop spamming. Okay.
Falcon 9 is a reusable rocket designed and manufactured by SpaceX.
Well, this is they got a wrong footage.
The Falcon 9 has succeeded in landing the first stage rocket 102 times and has been reused 82 times.
How can they do this?
Using a reusable rocket reduces launch costs by more than $7.7 million compared to using a new projectile. SpaceX's operations have expanded tenfold in the past decade, launching 30 rockets in the last year alone. The company also accounts for more than 60% of the global space launch vehicle market. Meanwhile, Europe's Ariane space, which once accounted for half of the commercial space launch vehicle market, has recently reduced its number of launches from 6 to 7 times a year to 3. Existing space launch vehicles can no longer compete against SpaceX. Subsequently, countries with advanced space technology are planning to develop new reusable launch vehicles before the year 2030.
Europe's Ariane Space is also researching reusable launch vehicles to develop low-cost projectiles, and it seems that developing reusable projectiles is inevitable if countries that currently have advanced space technology are to maintain the commercial market to some extent.
South Korea's own launch vehicle, the Nuri, which is set for its second launch, is not part of the commercial launch market as it is used to launch satellites into low orbit. The South Korean government has announced that it will develop launch vehicles that can handle larger payloads as well as reusable rockets as part of next-generation development projects that follow up on Nuri.
The multi-stage combustion cycle method is used in developed countries and has high efficiency and adjustable reignition output. If applied to the first stage, reusing the projectile becomes possible, and if applied to the last stage, separating multiple satellites becomes possible.
A new space era is coming, and South Korea is hoping that the success of Nuri's second launch will not only allow the country's launch vehicle technology to become completely independent, but also open up the possibility of entering the global commercial space launch market. 정은주, Arirang News.
Wow, that is something. So they are looking in for the reusable rockets. As I said, this program is inspired by SpaceX. So not having a reusable space rocket would be a big problem.
Of Nuri, the KSLV-II Korea's very own homegrown space rocket. Tell us about your impression. What was your first impression of it?
This is a pretty amazing accomplishment. We know that there are only few countries can actually do it. So it's just amazing accomplishment that in such a short period of time, Korea could reach that level of technologies. That's pretty impressive.
All right. Why don't you bring us up to speed on space rocket development in the United States and what NASA is doing as well?
Yeah, so I think I see about, it's just like a very well-established company like a SpaceX are doing pretty good. We all know that. Also, United Launch Systems, they are not only near the Earth, but they are sending the Perseverance rover to the Mars. So they're doing pretty good. But also, there's a company that a commercial company looking for benefit, the commercial benefit, which is like sending small satellite to near Earth orbit, like Rocket Lab. These are emerging too. But also we know that another group like Blue Origin and then Virgin Galactic, they are in space tourism. They're very active. So it's a lot of things going on in the United States.
Right. So we are getting confirmation from the government here that the journey of Nuri has all gone as planned. So that sounds like good news, and we're looking forward to the first communication between the satellite and the Antarctic station of Korea. Now, so the success of KSLV-II, which we are looking forward to the announcement in a little bit, what would that mean for the space rocket development here in Korea and for the global space rocket development?
So, traditionally a few countries, United States, and then the European countries, part of the European space agencies, and then Russia, and then China, Japan, India, they were dominating this launching development. But now, the success in the Korea, I think it means a lot, because I think more countries will more likely try the same thing. I think that kind of encourage other countries to try out the same thing too. That's what I expect.
But of course, as you mentioned, the Blue Origin and SpaceX, in Korea, we don't have commercial space flights like such. Do you think the success of KSLV-II could be a starter to opening?
I didn't know about the South Korea if they tested any solid rocket last year. So if they did, then it's great. But I didn't know. I don't know that. So they did. That's great.
Under space agreements, the NASA transferred space flight technology to SpaceX. And that's how SpaceX grows so radically. So I think KARI, Korea Aerospace Research Institute, could do the same thing. They could transfer technology to a commercial company. Then I think Korea also can really foster a lot of the space flight companies coming years.
Yep. And that is how the private space, ecosystem is built in India. Also, that is happening.
Space tourism will be more noticeable in the coming years. I think it's going to be more common.
Okay.
That's what I expect, personally.
I'll take your word for it. So I look forward to a space journey myself. Now, so Paul, the development of a satellite launcher. So how can this development benefit satellite launchers?
So as I mentioned, KARI can transfer this spaceflight technology. So I think any commercial companies planning to offer this launching service, definitely now they're capable. But also commercial, the company and the organization planning to send a satellite, it's a good news for them, because more competition, more companies are available means their price will go down. So launching costs will go down, which is very important, because the lower cost in the launching will really accelerate space economy.
Right, and also, South Korea is also looking to develop or, to eventually build a South Korea satellite-based navigation system and a 6G communications network. Could you walk us through that? I mean, what does that mean?
Okay, so that's a very important question. I think you could think of that the backbone of the fourth industrial revolution. So, for example, I think by getting really a Korea position systems, you could actually locate the positions and time accurately, which require for automated drivings. So it is critical. So you could think of that the backbone of the fourth industrial revolutions. That's why I think Korea now, I think Nuri is capable to go up to 700 kilometer altitudes, but I think the global navigation satellite system need to be placed in the geosynchronous orbit, which is about more than 35,000 kilometers away. So I think eventually Korea can do it. Then that will be very helpful to Korea's economical development in this era of the fourth industrial revolutions.
Absolutely. So this will be a key in the next 5 to 10 years. This technology.
I don't think so. The fourth industrial development revolution will be a 60 or regarding that, but we'll see.
Weapons, of course not. But however, it would be capable of developing it to a military communication of some sort, could it not?
So I think one thing noticeable is I think
right now, guys, we are still waiting in for the official confirmation. Right now, the data analysis is going on, in which they are verifying each and every parameter of the rocket, of each and every stage, and as well as the satellite. If it is healthy, everything is working fine, and then we can they can announce if the launch was full success. But as of now, we know that it has put the satellites into the targeted orbit. But how it has put those satellites, like everything went correctly, or it might have some issues, and then also like a backup computer might have saved the day. So we'll have to wait and see what happened. But right now, everything is looking good.
Rocket means that it's more geared towards commercial use. Is that what you're saying?
See, having a space program, people don't understand how important it is.
Successfully reached its target altitude of 700 kilometers.
You can actually, guard your country, because then you have your own space program, your own rockets. Then you can launch your own spy satellites or defense satellites, as they say, your own communication system, so that no other you don't have to rely on any other country. Then your own those advanced alert system, if there is any tsunami coming in, or any cyclone, tornado, certain things like that. So these are things which are very important, and for the national security and national importance. So you need to have a certain space program. So it's good that Korea actually did it, and finally they are having a proper space program now after this successful flight.
Right. So I will let you know when that communication has taken place. But I know that South Korea is also working with the United States on a lunar orbiter and hopes to land a probe on the moon by 2030. Could you explain a little bit about that project?
It's under the Artemis programs. So NASA and then the international partners, we are, unlike Apollo missions, Artemis programs, we try to get a permanent human base on the surface of moons. So I think Korea is a part of the Artemis. Korea also signed up Artemis Accord. So Korea will be. I expect Korea will be more very proactive partners in our human effort to landing and then working on the surface of moon. And eventually that will be the foundation to us help us go to the Mars and beyond.
Now, lastly, what's your forecast of this global race that's heating up currently into space? Do you expect it to heat up even more?
I think so too. I think there are two important issues. I think there are a lot of benefits in space. So one thing I see is the emerging space economy. We know that Morgan Stanley is estimating that within 20 years, the space economy will grow up to over $1 trillion, which is a very significant portion of the economy. So we know that more countries get involved. What are the motivation? Definitely the satellite-based communications and then internet service, we're going to be big portions, but also other sections, something like a civil aspect, like weather forecast, and then better management of the infrastructure using the satellite, and better management of the forest. There are a lot of benefits, definitely national security. So I think every country will be heading to space.
Right, I'm just gonna have to stop you right there, because we are getting news that they have successfully communicated with the Antarctic Sejong Station. So I think that means a success for the Nuri KSLV-II liftoff of the South Korea's very first homegrown space rocket. And I'm very happy to end this interview with you, Paul, on this very successful note. Thank you so much for your insights. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your insights.
Okay, so there you go, guys. Finally, we have communication with the satellite. This means it was 100% successful.
Coverage of the liftoff of KSLV-II Nuri, and we have just gotten confirmation that the satellite has successfully communicated with the Antarctic Space Station down in Antarctica, the Sejong Space Station, which means the Nuri's second launch has been a success. Professor An, explain to us, elaborate for us, what does this mean?
So we got the news that actually the Nuri reached the 700 kilometer of altitude, and actually maybe at that time actually maybe the engineers would know that velocity, if that velocity condition satisfies the condition for the successful circulation. But actually, the final confirmation of the satellite should have been, checked by the communication with the ground station, and that happened about 3 minutes ago. And actually, the final confirmation of the Nuri program can be now announced, I think.
Really? Okay. So now, engineers down there and your colleagues and fellows, they are now undergoing the data analysis of this. What are some of the points that they should be on the lookout for? What are they looking at? What analysis are they doing?
So actually, the data that we hear from the announcement are kind of limited. Actually, we know that actually the Nuri reached 700 kilometer altitude. We know that actually it satisfactorily separated the stages and fairing, but actually we don't know. I mean, for us, don't know about the actual, what is actual thrust profile, what is actual the acceleration profile, what is the actual kind of the pressure inside of the combustion chamber, etc. So actually that kind of data, although that is not kind of affecting the success or failure of the Nuri itself, but actually that is kind of the valuable data for our improvement of the engine and the overall the system as well. So maybe they will be starting the analysis of that kind of the various data.
Right. So what we heard from the Science and ICT Ministry is that it will take about half an hour from the communication point for them to analyze the data that's been gathered from this communication. Now, this data, so the first set of data that's been gathered or from this first communication, what will that encompass? Like, what will that contain?
So from the first communication, actually, that data is not very complicated, actually. So that is the data from the satellite saying that I am alive, right? So, but to make that signal, actually, the satellite should be circulating around the Earth and arrive at that point that can communicate with the pole, the South Pole, right? So actually that means actually the circulation of the satellite is normal, right? And the orbit has been successfully created.
So now that we have satellites in orbit right now these satellites, what can we expect them to function as? I mean, what kind of data do we expect them to bring us?
So the satellite has a couple of the subsystems that has been created based on new technology, including the thermal battery and some control moment gyro that is used to the attitude control of the satellite and some other communication system as well. So on the orbit, I mean, when the satellite is kind of perfectly stabilized, and the subsystem will kind of conduct
particle accelerator in space. Wow. Okay.
The result of the function will be communicated with the ground, and that will prove if the subsystems are kind of functioning well or not, and that is kind of the verification of the technology that has been developed in Korea for the satellite. Although that is not for the launch vehicle.
So right now, they're still looking in for the data, but right now things are looking good. And talking about the next job for the Korean Space Agency is to improve this one, because they need to first of all fly these engines and fly this rocket reliably. That is one point. And then they need to improve the payload capacity, as well as make a rocket which is geostationary synchronous orbit capable. Okay, so finally if they are able to do that, then they'll be able to go on for the reusable rocket technology. And yes, things are looking good on that purpose right now.
as we know, actually, the launch vehicle is the only transportation system that can connect the surface of the Earth to the space, right? And meaning that we could not, have our own launch vehicle so far means that actually we didn't even start the first step in kind of the space kind of the era, right? So having our own technology and having our own launch vehicle means we just take the first step, toward this space. But that is just first step, and actually there are ways to go. We can do many things, many exciting things in space, because the space is limitless and there are many things that we can do.
Right. Well begun is half done. So, we've begun this journey. I'd like to know again how this Nuri, this KSLV-II Nuri rocket is composed. I'd like to know the components of Nuri.
Okay, so actually I wrote this small, model for the explanation. So Nuri again is the three, stage rocket. So the first stage is here, and the second stage, and that is third stage. And so Nuri is 47 meter long. Actually, its diameter is about 3.5 meter, and actually the total kind of the mass is about 200 ton. And the first stage is creating, about 300 ton of the thrust, which is the first.
Which part is the first stage?
So this part is the first stage. And actually, the first stage is using the 4 units of the 75-ton engine clustered together. So 75 multiplied by 4, that makes 300 ton of the thrust. That is sufficient to lift this heavy vehicle up from the ground.
Right, so the 75-ton engine, that will be the heart of Nuri, right?
That's right, yeah. So what is surprising again is actually if you are burning the 75 engine, 1 unit of the 75 engine will consume about 250 kilogram of the fuel propellant per second. Per second.
Wow.
So the first stage of the Nuri will consume about 1 ton of the propellant per second. It's amazing, actually. So, and also in terms of the engine, actually, the engine is working in a very harsh and extreme condition. I mean, the temperature inside of the combustion chamber of the engine is more than 3,000 degrees Celsius. So actually, it is hard to imagine, but actually, the normal kind of the melting point of the steel is about 1,500. So actually, it is kind of working in a very harsh and extreme condition.
Right, harsh to say the least, if you will. Right, so at this point, I'd like to go back to the package, the report that we had to cut off about the commercial use and the commercial ramifications of the success of the KSLV-II or the Nuri. South Korean companies, of course, have launched themselves into the space business to develop 6G communication and lunar exploration technology. And the plan now is to increase South Korea's market share by developing giant antennas and multi-orbit satellites. And this is key to the launch of the KSLV-II Nuri. Our Ian Jin explains.
A giant satellite antenna with a diameter of 27.4 meters is South Korea's National Registered Cultural Heritage number 436. In 1970, it became South Korea's first to provide satellite communications to 7 overseas countries. The KOMPSAT Satellite Service Center in Chungcheongnam-do Province, operated by domestic telecommunications firm KTSAT, has now grown into the largest of its kind in Asia, with 45 giant antennas and 5 satellites. With a network that covers 60% of the world, KTSAT provides high-speed satellite data, broadcasting, and marine communications, and has launched a space data business that combines artificial intelligence with satellite data. KTSAT plans to establish a multi-orbit satellite communication network equipped with low-orbit satellites at an altitude of 500 kilometers, medium-orbit satellites, and geostationary satellites at an altitude of 36,000 kilometers that covers the entire world by 2030. A terrestrial network is sufficient for 5G, but satellite communication is essential for 6G, which transmits 125 gigabytes per second.
Construction of the 6G system itself uses both terrestrial and satellite networks. That's why, without building both together, it'd be difficult to have the communication services expected from 6G.
SK Broadband opened the Yeoju Satellite Center in Gyeonggi-do Province in 2017 to receive overseas broadcasts via satellite and use it as part of its IPTV service. The Yeoju Satellite Center has one antenna that is 11 meters wide and 4 antennas with a diameter of 6.4 meters. These antennas are also used for deep space exploration at a distance of more than 1 million kilometers. Equipped with a reflector that's 35 meters wide, the antennas will be in charge of ground equipment related to the lunar probe scheduled to be launched in August and Korean lunar orbiter deep space communication. The global space industry market is worth around $340 billion, but the size of South Korea's is only about $2.7 billion. As growth of the global space industry is expected to double over the next decade, South Korea is setting its sights on thoroughly preparing related businesses. 이은진, 아리랑 뉴스.
So, Professor Ahn, I'd like to pick up on the commercial or the business side of this liftoff of Nuri, or the success of the KSLV-II. We mentioned the 6G communications and other commercial use means. What are some of the everyday benefits that we can expect from the success of KSLV-II?
So the technology that has been obtained during the development of the KSLV-II that will be used for the other kind of the industries as well. I mean, as I mentioned, that the very high kind of the reliable kind of material and kind of the guidance and control kind of the technology and other kind of technology that can be used for other kind of industries as well. That is one of the benefits. And actually, in terms of the commercialization, if we can, use the launch vehicle to provide the launch service to the to put other countries, etc., into the orbit, maybe we can make profit by doing that service. But actually, this Nuri launch vehicle should be kind of improved from the current status. So actually, we should be able to make sure that it is more reliable. We just complete just first success, and the kind of the history should be accumulated. And also, we have to improve its capability so that it can carry the heavier payload to the farther destination, to the Mars, well, to the moon, well, to the asteroid as well. So the kind of the reliability and also the capability improvement, that's what we have to do to make it actually commercial.
So compared to other, let's say, a powerful space powerful nations, how does that compare with the rockets or satellite launchers of those nations?
So the capability of the Nuri is similar to that of the how can I say? So one of the very similar kind of the launch vehicle currently available in the world is the launch vehicle called the Vega, that is developed by ESA and manufactured by Italy. So it is the capability of the putting about 1.5 ton of the payload to the orbit. But in terms of the kind of economics, actually the cost to create one unit of the Nuri would be higher. So it is very critical that we take some measures to reduce the cost. So I mean, the reusable kind of technology that you mentioned, and also some other kind of measure like the streamlining of the operation, and also the better engine, also the better kind of the structure, the technology. So there are many ways of the reducing the cost of the Nuri. That is kind of something that we have to do as a homework.
Right. So, what are some of the? What's left now for those engineers who've been working on Nuri? I mean, what will they be? For instance, from next week, what will their next assignment be?
Well, so next week, maybe today, they will be happy with the success of Nuri, and but from day 2 or day 3, actually, they will continue their kind of work. And actually, as I mentioned, that the kind of the continued kind of the the repeating of the kind of the manufacturing, also launching of the Nuri. Actually, there is official program to do that from now on for about 5 years. So the engineers will kind of complete kind of repeat the manufacturing and launching of the Nuri about I think that 4 times from now on. But actually, that program has the objectives. One objective is to make sure that the reliability of the Nuri vehicle is kind of improved. And another objective is you mentioned about the commercialization, but actually the technology that has been obtained so far should be kind of transferred to commercial kind of private sectors. That is kind of the secondary kind of the objective of that program.
Right. So, so engineers will still be working. You don't even want to give them the rest of the week to take off. You want them to get to work from tomorrow. Very harsh on your colleagues.
Okay.
So there's another 5 years of work that needs to be done. So what you're saying is that we'll see many more liftoffs of Nuri. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So actually, we will continue kind of the repetition of what we have done so far. But during the phase again, so the reliability and kind of the technology transfer will take place.
Right.
And we are more kind of ready for the commercialization of the launch service.
Right. So we have actually kicked off our very own space development from here on forward, from today. Now, at this point, I'd like to check back in with our team down in Kohung at the Naro Space Center. Our very own Han Sung-woo, I'm sure very excited down there, is down there at the Naro Space Center. So, Sung-woo, tell us what the ambience there is like after a very successful first communication between the satellite and the Antarctic Space Station.
Well, Kwon-young, you just said it right there. The Antarctic Space Station, very first sign has been communicated, and we're happy. The crew is happy. I'm sure the journalists at the press center behind me are happy, but I don't want everyone to be too happy because another procedure awaits. As you know, 18 hours from now, well, the launch was at 4, so maybe 17 hours from now, we'll have to see whether the performance verification satellite is actually working. So working and putting them into orbit are 2 totally different things, and we'll only be able to find that out tomorrow, the 22nd, 17 hours from now. And then a week from now, on the 29th, don't forget that in the performance verification, there are also 4 mini cube satellites developed by Seoul National University, Joseon University, Yonsei University, and KAIST. These 4 satellites will be released into space at a 2-day interval between each other. That happens in a week, and we'll have to see whether they operate accordingly as well. So we're happy. I'm sure you're happy. And so far, everything's been working, but we'll just have to see. I don't want everyone to be too positive. You just have to be, because we're journalists, right, Kwon-young? We're journalists. We have to see what goes on moving forward from now.
Well, yeah, I am one optimist. I am one happy journalist, and you are one very prudent journalist.
Okay, so guys, things are looking good as per they say, but still not any official confirmation. But as he said, the PBSat has some work to do, but still the rocket performance can be verified, which was the main, main thing to consider today.
Thank you. So, Professor An, as Han Sung-woo just said, so he just, rained on our excitement and cheers. So he says final step awaits, and we need to verify that the performance verification satellite needs to be verified as completely working 17 hours from now. What is he talking about?
So what he mentioned is correct. So actually the communication with the Antarctica station means, as I mentioned, that I'm alive. But actually, the second kind of communication with, I think that with the Daejeon station is confirming the satellite is kind of the functioning properly.
Guys, if you are just joining in, let me just tell you that KSLV-II Nuri rocket has been lifted off an hour ago, and it placed the satellites into its targeted orbit. That's what we have heard of. and the satellite is alive also because it communicated with the ground station. So still no official word from them, but unofficial sources said yes, the rocket did its job and now the satellite has to do its job. So things are looking good. We will be seeing another launch, hopefully, yep, hopefully this year or the next year. And yes, that's it. Right now, that's the update for you.
Some of our journalists, including our Han Sung-woo, they're very prudent. They're sometimes harsh on our scientists. But yes, so a final step awaits, and the performance verification satellite needs to send a signal saying that it is well functioning, and we hope that will be a success as well.
I hope so.
Right. So it'll be roughly in the morning hours of tomorrow.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and of course we will get data from that, and those set of data will also be a valuable set of data for engineers and scientists to analyze.
That's right. So. That's kind of the data from the satellite that we, launched from our own technology. Everything that we receive is kind of the valuable.
Right. So, in essence, everything from scratch has been made with our very Korean technology from scratch to now. Did you expect a success this time? Because a lot of the scientists and engineers that I've spoken to at KARI and everywhere, they were pretty confident of the launch this time.
Well, so actually, I was kind of confident, but I didn't want to say like that because as I mentioned, that uncertainty is everywhere, right? But I was kind of confident. Based on my kind of the communication with my colleagues at KARI, and they were pretty confident about their kind of the work. So that's what I felt.
Right, and also come August, there is another project that we will be seeing that's called, and in fact we will be picking up our Nuri, which we'll be talking about later, but we want to go back to on site where they are making an announcement on the success of the Nuri launch, and this is the Minister of Science and
information comes in.
예.
Honorable fellow Koreans, I am the Minister of MSIT Lee Jong-woo. Today, I stand here to announce a historic event, not only in the history of science and technology in Republic of Korea, but the history of Republic of Korea. 2022, June 21st, today, Nuri was launched at 16 hours, and it had gone into the target orbit, and it has successfully separated its satellites, and it is now placed on the orbit. The Korean homegrown satellite has been a success, and I would like to announce this. Fellow Koreans, today, the skies and the aerospace of Republic of Korea has opened up. And we have made a great achievement. In 1993 June, we had launched the first science satellite to the open air, and it has been 30 years exactly. In Korea, we have made the satellite with our own hands, and we have become the 7th country around the world to be successful in this. From now on, until 2027, the Korean government will launch 4 more additional launches, and to sophisticate and the performance as well as the safety of the satellites. And in August, we are going to launch Nuri, which will be the first moon orbiter, and we will also participate in the Artemis program with the U.S., and thus we will enhance the capacity of aerospace program of South Korea. And the Korean government will also provide institutional and systematic support to this regard. in order to prepare for a new space era, and we will form an ecosystem of ourselves. We have successfully launched and developed this program with our own hands, and I would like to thank all the Korean researchers and the company people from other companies who had chipped into this project sincerely, and I would also like to thank the Korean people who had cheered on us sincerely. The government, together with the people of Korea, we will walk into this journey, this great journey into the aerospace development. Thank you very much.
네, 그러면
So that was the South Korean Minister of Science and ICT, Lee Jung-ho, announcing officially the success of the launch of KSLV-II.
And we have an official success.
Now, Professor Ahn is here with me.
We have an official success. Korea has now become the 7th country to independently launch its rocket into the orbit with its own homegrown technology, which is a great milestone to have. This is you can say, the first foundation stone for any space program, and from here on, I can see this Korean space program to accelerate even more, even further. So that is that, and finally we had a successful liftoff, successful launch, successful insertion in the orbit. Deliver about 30 million to aid the Ukrainian government. Cool, that's a great initiative to have. Okay, so now we should be, I think I should end the stream now. We have got the official confirmation. And yes,
Korea.
new chapter
I
for
want to
the
pick
South
up on the
Korea.
question that we left off right before the announcement of the science minister. So in August, we have a new project regarding an explorer on the moon, Nuri. What is this, and what are some of the assignments that we have in terms of space development as a follow-up to Nuri?
So Nuri is the first lunar probe of our country. So that is the lunar orbiter. So that is a very challenging program, and actually I hope that would be successful as well. But unfortunately, the launch vehicle that is carrying Nuri to the moon is not ours. That is the Falcon 9 launch vehicle of the SpaceX. And hopefully, maybe the next kind of the space exploration mission, maybe that will be the lunar lander mission, can be kind of done based on our kind of the own launch vehicle. Maybe there can be some kind of the improved version of the Nuri, right? So that should be take place.
Right, and for follow-up assignments of the Nuri or the KSLV-II, as you mentioned earlier, you talked about working on the improvements on the reliability of the Nuri, the satellite launcher.
Right, reliability and also capability, yeah.
Right.
And also cost reduction as well.
And reducing the cost of the rocket. All right, well, that was a wonderful performance by our Nuri, and thank you very much for your insights, for staying all throughout our coverage, and congratulations to you and your fellows, and to you and your engineers as well, and thank you for your coverage.
Thank you very much.
And that was our live coverage of the special launch of our KSLV-II, the Nuri, and I'm happy to end on the note that we can tell you that we have successfully seen the successful launch of the KSLV-II Nuri and the successful first communication between the satellite and the Antarctic Space Station here. All right, that's the end of this live coverage, and but stay tuned. Our live newscast comes at 7 p.m. Korea time.
Okay, so guys, finally, you just saw this beautiful rocket went into the sky and into the space, and did its job perfectly to deliver the payloads to its intended orbit. Well, now South Korea has become the 7th country and has entered into the space era, as they say. So, yep, everything looks great now. Now they can actually open up their space program and do great things in space. But we'll do all those things. But let me just tell you guys that this rocket, as I said, in on this channel we do all those everything you need to know before the launch. So you let me just summarize today's launch. So we had this KSLV rocket, and here you can see actually the whole thing, the first stage, second stage, and third stage. KARI 0755 engine is the main driving engine for this rocket. Four on that, one on the second stage, and one another engine on the third stage. This is how it looks like, more like a SpaceX engine, because it's inspired from SpaceX, right? And yes, there is this awesome animation which you must check out, giving us insights on how this rocket has been made and all those things. So yeah, that was great. And yes, these are all the satellites which are there on the rocket. So this PVSat has been separated. This has been, the satellite has been separated. This PVSat has its work to separate these four satellites also. These are the CubeSats developed by various institutes, which is left right now, and will be confirmed in 17 hours or so. But a main part, which is the technology demonstration for the rocket, has been successful completely, and there was no problem whatsoever. So that is great. This is the mission profile, and these are some photos, and you can see how it looks like. So we are, there you go, official confirmation of 700-kilometer targeted orbit achieved by the Nuri rocket, and that is great to have. And now on 23rd we will be seeing two launches. One is from the Ariane 5, which is great because that is one of those rare launches, and another sounding rocket launch, which I personally love, because there you can actually see those great scientific experiments flying in. So that is great to have. So guys, and you can follow me on Twitter. This is my Twitter handle at RocketGyan, since it's in my description also, for latest updates on space and whatnot. So okay, so we have one footage from the cameras mounted on board on, that is great. Oh, it just destroys when it enters into the atmosphere. Obviously that is supposed to happen, but wow, that is some unique view, and it is great. There you go, and it just landed onto the from the space onto the ground. That was great. Okay, cool. So yes, finally it has happened, guys. The KSLV-II rocket is able to make it to the orbit, and right now it is in the orbit, and right now we just need to wait and see how it would look like for the CubeSat separation. But yes, and we have also got some confirmation, updates on those um, Artemis program. Yesterday was the wet dress rehearsal, but it was cancelled due to some red flag. They'll look into it and do it again. But uh, the moon base by this decade is looking not so great, because recent reports from NASA suggest that Artemis program could be stretched till 2030 for normal, human exploration, not a base being started, just a normal human exploration. So well, that's that. But I hope we'll be able to see a base, just a small base, a small one room base by this end of this decade. It would be great if we can. So yeah. Okay, guys, on that note, we can yep, the dragon, we can end this stream. We had a beautiful liftoff, and obviously everything went as per the plan. The rocket did do all those things that it was bound to do. So yep, Korea has become the 7th country in this world to do all those things. Now finally we'll be waiting for some other Nuri launches coming in this year or the next year. So thank you all for tuning in, guys, and if you like the stream, please leave a like down below and subscribe for more, because on 23rd of June I'll be again streaming for the Ariane 5 launch and the sounding rocket launch, so you don't have to miss it. And this week or last week of June is really busy, because we have those two launches. Then we have a capstone launch, which is a Rocket Lab launch going to the moon. So um, that one should be interesting to see. Then we have one launch from the Atlas 5 also, and we have a launch from the KSLV also. So it's a busy week last week. So yep, uh, that is great, and congratulations, South Korea. I hope you'll be able to achieve great things in space, and thank you all for tuning in. Until then, this is Pianshu Roila. You just saw Rocket Gyan. Stay safe, stay healthy, and